Alright, let's talk clarinet reeds. What's the deal with them? Why don't they always work? And do they ever make you want to do something like this? Well, I've been performing and teaching clarinet professionally for over 20 years, and I have a few tips and pointers I'd like to share with you if you're just starting out. In this video, I'll be talking about how to select a reed, what the differences are between cane and plastic reeds, what brand names of reeds I recommend, and how to store and maintain your reeds. So if this is a subject that interests you, stay tuned for the rest of this video. So let's break reeds down into three categories to help us determine what to look for in a reed. To me, a reed can be either too hard, too soft, or just right. So when we're talking about a reed that's too hard, usually the sound will be very airy and fuzzy, and when you articulate on it, you'll get sort of a thuddy sound. Just in general, a hard reed is difficult to play on. When we're talking about a reed that's too soft, initially it can be very easy to play on, but over time you'll notice that the sound will become shrill and bright, especially the higher you go on the clarinet. And when you articulate on a reed that's too soft, you'll notice that the sound will start to spread. When we're talking about a reed that's just right, or what we'll call the Goldilocks reed, you want the sound to be resonant and warm, and you want it to vibrate evenly across all the registers of the clarinet. Also, when you articulate on a reed that's just right, you'll notice that it will be easy to articulate, but also have some resistance to it so that the sound doesn't spread. Basically, you want the reed to be easy to play on and also feel comfortable. So I'll insert some clips right here on what a hard, soft, and just right reed sounds like. When it comes to playing on plastic or cane reeds, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to consider about both. I personally prefer to play on cane reeds, but there are a lot of great plastic reed alternatives on the market today. So here are some pros and cons about playing on a plastic reed. Pros: they're not affected by weather, temperature, and humidity changes. They don't warp or dry out. They're more consistent and they last longer. Cons: can be hard to control. To me, they're not as flexible as cane reeds. The sound can be inconsistent between all of the registers of the clarinet, and they can have an uneven, harsh response with articulation. A lot of people sound good on plastic reeds, but sometimes the tone quality can sound synthetic and hollow. Here are some pros and cons about playing on cane reeds. Pros: you get a warmer, clearer tone, an even response across all the registers of the clarinet, more control over sound and articulation. You have more flexibility with dynamics, tone, range, and articulation. Cons: they're not consistent throughout a box. Out of a box of 10 reeds, you may get 2 or 3 that are good. They're affected by weather, temperature changes, and humidity changes. They can warp and dry out easily, and it's a living organic material, and the quality of the reed stock will vary by manufacturer. I'll insert some clips here of me playing a plastic and a cane reed so you can hear the differences. There are a lot of brand names of reeds on the market today, and it may be a little daunting to know where to begin. So I thought I would talk about what brands of reeds I prefer and what I recommend to my students. The first thing to know about reeds when you're starting out is that they come in different strengths. So if you're just beginning on clarinet, I recommend playing on a strength 2 or 2.5. A lot of band directors like to recommend the orange box of Rico reeds, but there are other models within the Rico brand that I like better than the orange box. I like the Rico Grand Concert Select traditional reed. The cut of the reed is thicker than the ordinary orange box, and so it produces a warmer, darker tone. I also like the Lurie brand of reeds for beginners in the strength 2 or 2.5. They generally have a warm, rich tone, and they're easy to get a sound on when you're first starting out on clarinet. I prefer to mainly play on Vandoren reeds. I think they're very consistent with the strengths and materials they use for each box of reeds. I find the Vandoren traditional reeds in 2 or 2.5 works best for beginners. I use the Vandoren traditional 3.5 most of the time, but I also recommend the Vandoren V12 and V21 to more advanced students. Just for reference, I like to play the V12 and V21 reeds in the summertime when it's more humid outside and I need a harder reed. And I like to play the traditional reeds in the colder months when there's not as much humidity in the air and I need a softer cut reed. So there are a lot of options out there, and it might take some trial and error to figure out what works best for you. Just remember that you want your reed to sound good and be comfortable to play. So now that you have an idea of what to look for in a reed, let's talk about how to store and maintain them. One thing to know about cane reeds is that they will warp over time. This is because they're constantly going through a process of wetting and drying. So when you're finished playing on your reed, you'll want to take it off the mouthpiece and let it dry flat side up for a little bit and wipe any excess moisture away. Once you've removed the moisture, you'll want to store your reeds in a reed case. I prefer the reed cases that have grooved floors so that the air can circulate around the reed as it continues to dry. Just always be careful of the tip of the reed when placing them in your case because they're fragile. There are a lot of reed cases out there at different price points, but here are a few of my favorites. This Leblanc reed case holds 4 reeds, features a grooved floor, and is relatively inexpensive. I like this Vandoren reed case. It holds 8 reeds, has a grooved floor for better ventilation that prevents the reeds from warping, and has a secure closure. I also like this Vandoren Hygro reed case. It holds 6 reeds, has a grooved floor, and features a humidity indicator and a sponge that you moisten to help with humidity. Just one quick note about storing your reeds and controlling the humidity. If reeds don't have enough moisture or humidity, the cane becomes brittle and you have to work hard to rehydrate the reed before it will respond, and this can take a long time. That's why you want to store your reeds in a humidity controlled case, or I just use a Ziploc bag in the colder months. I live in a very humid climate, and in the summer months I don't worry so much about humidifying my reeds. But if you live in a drier climate, you might consider storing your reeds in a Ziploc bag or some sort of humidity-controlled case. So I hope this information about clarinet reeds was useful. I know when I first started out, there wasn't a lot of information that was accessible to me. So I hope this gave you a good place to start. And I wish you the best of luck in your journey on the clarinet.